Hello, and welcome to this video on the conviction of several scientists in Italy. These seismologists were found guilty of manslaughter after failing to give warning of an earthquake. The defendants were accused of negligence and malpractice in evaluating the danger and keeping the central city informed of the risks. 7 scientists and experts were found guilty on the 22nd of October 2012. When an earthquake killed 300 people in L'Aquila in central Italy. They were set to receive 6 years in prison each. The case was a non-jury trial. Instead, it was led by a judge, who made the final decision. This is important due to the reaction from the worldwide scientific community. It was seen as an egregious miscarriage of justice, in expecting a probability prediction to be perfect. Some of Italy's most prominent scientists were party to this debacle. They were respected for their work worldwide. People simply were doing their job. To quote one of the convicted, Enzo Boschi, to begin quote, "I thought I would have been acquitted. I still don't understand what I was convicted of." End quote. They were accused of giving inexact, incomplete, and contradictory information about whether small tremors felt by the L'Aquila residents before the major earthquake should have constituted grounds for a quake warning. The prosecution was seeking 4 years in jail for each of these people. Roger Musson, head of Seismic Hazards and Archives at the British Geological Survey, had this to say on the matter. Beginning the quote, "This is a very sad business indeed. These are people I know, who are doing their best to give an accurate account of large earthquakes. It seems to be wrong that they should be prosecuted for offering scientific advice to the best of their ability." End quote. The prosecution for this case argued that the other scientists should have policed their colleagues' statements and made public corrections. This would have avoided the situation by not taking action. They were guilty by association and inaction. The geologists were banned from public service and were ordered to pay financial compensation to the city of L'Aquila, as well as to the families of the 29 people named on the indictment. The total sum amounted to just over $10 million. This was coupled with the 6-year jail term. This case, as simple as it seems on the surface, has a sweeping impact on research and science worldwide. Fundamentally, the concern is that it sets an example for seismic scientists failing to achieve unreasonable expectations in the future. This sets a very dangerous precedent that will discourage other scientists from offering their advice on natural hazards and trying to help society in this way. What might happen if a novel drug or procedure is put forward for clinical testing but fails? Or about modeling a pathogenic spread, or genetic testing itself? These are all probability games. Enzo Boschi actually started warning other researchers to stay away from risk assessments as a result of this. To begin his quote, when journalists ask my opinion about things, I used to tell them, but no more. Scientists have to shut up." End quote. This was given to Nature in 2011. The issue here is about the miscommunication of science, and that people should not be putting responsible scientists who gave measured, scientifically accurate information into prison for doing exactly what they were meant to be doing. Key to the dispute is the kind of cautious language that is often used by scientists, full of hedging and caveats and reserves, which scientists typically use in predicting the highly uncertain events, but which the public can generally either neither understand nor readily interpret. Considering that 6 people have just had their lives destroyed, and the scientific communication has taken a considerable beating, there is a somewhat bright side to this story. On the 10th of November 2014, news was released regarding their appeal. 2 years after they were convicted, this conviction was overturned for 6 of the 7 men. The last had their sentence reduced to 2 years. The 7th man was Bernardo de Bernardinas, who received a 2-year sentence for causing the death of some, but not all of the 29 victims involved in the trial. The last man received his conviction based on a single statement. De Bernardinas was a hydrologist by trade, and was asked if the swarm of earthquakes was a sign of worse things to come, giving the reply, or beginning the quote, "On the contrary, the scientific community assures me that the situation is good because of the continuous discharge of energy." End quote. This was an unusual statement given that any reasonable seismologist would say that it was rubbish. This decision has come as a form of relief for the scientific community and the public, as it opens the door to freely offering their expertise once again. Scientists should be free to advise on matters of public policy and safety without fear of legal repercussions. This matter had to be taken to the appellate court, where the appellate judges were particularly critical of the indictment brought against the seven. The public prosecutor and the endorsement by Billy for its reliance on what they call a purely regulatory measure of guilt. This attempted to show that they had flouted specific rules and duties imposed on them by law as part of a government agency. But the appellate court's judges believed that the laws were too vaguely defined to allow such an argument to be made, and instead they say the experts should have been judged on how well they adhered to the science that was present and available to be judged at the time. The appellate judges concluded that the scientists were innocent because there was no reason to think that the swarm had increased and the risk of major earthquake had gone up. They maintained that the triggering of larger earthquakes by smaller ones is an idea that scientists have only taken seriously since the L'Aquila earthquake, meaning that, as with most scientific principles, it has simply grown and adjusted to fit into a better model of how to predict these things. Given that seismology is still a relatively uncertain and tenuous form of science, this is a significant step forward. This case highlights one of the major problems with science, and that is communication. Not with other scientists, of course, but communicating scientific findings to the layperson and public so they understand the underlying principles, and in particular, the idea of a consensus. One scientist's statement is not necessarily the statement of an entire field or the predominant opinion. Thank you for watching this video. Please place any comments, questions, or suggestions you may have below.